This crash wasn't just aggressive sailing. It wasn't just three teams misjudging space. This was the result of a course configuration and the racing rules conspiring together to encourage high closing angles and speeds. Now, SailGP's reaching starts are notoriously dangerous, but in this start there was an extra detail about this particular start line which in my opinion drastically increased the likelihood of this outcome. Now SailGP's got tight courses, 12 F50s in this case doing 30 to 40 knots and a reaching start. But this reaching start was in fact set up slightly downwind, and it's that last detail that I think is critical. So in sailing, our kind of tactical behaviour in boats on the race course is shaped by the rules and the types of courses we sail. The rules determine who yields, who can attack, and most importantly tells you what the risks and rewards are for each set of actions. Now, in SailGP's rush to redefine sailing, it seems to me that they often forget why sailing has already been defined as it is. So, before we get on with what was wrong with this start, let's just look back at what a conventional upwind start is like. In an upwind start, boats approach the line, close hauled, majority on starboard, with the wind coming from ahead, and the fleet is kind of compressed below the line. Now, imagine in those set of circumstances, you're early to the start. What are your options? Well, you might think you can just bear away back down below the line and redo your start approach. But in an upwind start, the rules strongly discourage that. A windward boat must give way. So as soon as you bear away and head down into the massed fleet below, the onus is on you to avoid a collision with the fleet. You have to keep clear. The rules make kind of bearing off back below the line a bad move, and that leaves you with the only real tool is just to slow your boat down. This whole thing creates a really important behavioural effects. Boats that are early have to avoid aggressive moves back into the fleet, and instead holding still is the preferred tactic, or in the worst case scenario and you are drifting over the line, you take the lesser OCS penalty compared to risking a collision where you'll be certainly at fault. Okay, what about the kind of strategical setup with SailGP then? Well, here SailGP uses reaching starts, and that already removes some of these kind of strategic and tactical structures that work with the upwind start. But for me, critically, the fact of this particular start was it wasn't just a reaching start, it was actually slightly downwind with the line and the first leg away from the direction of the wind. Those factors mean you reach a tipping point. Everything effectively flips on its head from an upwind start. Take the situation, imagine you're in that position of being slightly early to the line, like Phil Robertson was. The rules, though, are now on your side. They're on the side of the boat, turning back away from the line and turning into the fleet. Now, you can blame Phil Robertson all you want, but the rules say that him heading up as leeward boat there is effectively fine. And if you're early to the start, the rules say you can avoid being over the line by changing your course and heading directly back into the fleet. So the fact we're all surprised this is happening and awarding penalty points for it is, to me, a little bit laughable. Now, sure, you can say that, above all, the rules say that boats should avoid a collision, and Italy and Phil Robertson were given 4 penalty points for not doing enough to avoid this collision. But that's a much harder judgment for a sailor to make in the moment of when they go from, being the right-of-way boat to just having to avoid contact, especially at these speeds. For me, this extra punishment for where there's a collision is an afterthought to kind of patch over where the rules aren't working in the first place. Now, all of that is kind of true for all of SailGP's reaching starts, but I think one of the critical details which made New York worse is that the line was slightly downwind and the first leg was slightly downwind as well. This means that right-of-way boat who is early to the line is not able to just luff up, but they're actually able to sail at a full 90 degrees to the fleet and the direction of the race course to stop themselves from crossing the line. And they can do that without tacking and giving up their right-of-way. Now, reaching starts for this reason are always going to be more dangerous, and an upwind start limits the manoeuvrability of the right-of-way boats. So they're basically, if you're right-of-way, you're sailing on a predictable angle. And then anyone who departs from that predictable angle, well, they had better keep clear of the rest. So what's the solution? Well, SailGP could fix this with tighter first legs. That would limit just how great these angles can become between the right-of-way boat and those piling in from behind. Every degree closer to the wind that first leg is, and every degree the line is angled more towards the wind, reduces the closing angles between right-of-way boats trying to stay behind the line and avoid being over early, and the on-time starters. So that's critical for minimising the consequences of these collisions. And I have argued for tighter first legs in the past. That was when talking about the specific risks of a death zone in a previous video. But it seems that this could be another reason to bring the first leg a little bit closer to the wind. Now, I think that should be the first thing that SailGP try, because it's the most simple solution, requiring no rules changes and a very kind of like small change to the course configuration. There are two other options though. Tell me which one you prefer. So the first other option I see is they could just do upwind starts. I've already explained how the rules of sailing and the dynamics of boats really work hand in hand here to produce kind of a safe and fair starting conditions. But, would reverting to a conventional start be acceptable for a league who wants to redefine sailing? Well, there is another option, and it comes from people who do a lot of reaching starts. Like the windsurfers and the winging, where they have I think it's quite a new rule, but basically where boats are reaching towards the line about 90 degrees to true wind, they have to basically hold their course. Windward boats are still a keep clear boat, but a leeward boat can't sail above their course to the next mark, even in the warning period. So this makes it all a lot more predictable. Everyone is sailing on a kind of set line, and anyone who is doing ducking and weaving does it at their own peril, and the onus is on them to stay clear of the others. This just keeps everything much more predictable, with the majority of boats sailing on a straight line, kind of a bit like what happens with an upwind start. Now, it'd be great to hear from you who have used this rule for winging and windsurfing and how well that actually works in practice, and whether you think it could be a solution for SailGP. Now, I think this is just one area where SailGP probably needs to reevaluate their race configuration. At the league, there has been a huge effort to grow the amount of boats, improve the fan experience of the venues, but I'm kind of feeling what's been neglected is the race format. For me, there are these instances which are hugely frustrating, but some of it's getting a bit stale as well. I'm kind of fed up of watching these avoidable crashes on the reaching legs. And I think it's kind of costing the league in terms of, well, first of all, repairs. It's costing them a huge amount of money to get these boats on the water. It's costing those franchise backers in terms of they're losing out on exposure. And I think it's kind of costing the fan experience. I not only want to see, people don't only want to see their own team but they want to see their team race against all the other teams. Every time we lose teams these crashes, I think it devalues the competition. You know, what this starting leg is one thing they could re-look at. They could look at redefining the rules on it. I also think the overall weekend format and the final race, as I've said in the past, is getting a bit formulaic, and I would like to see SailGP shake that up a little bit as well. I would be really interested to read in the comments what your thoughts are on the kind of race format, the kind of sporting product of SailGP, and if there's any areas that you think like this that need tweaking. Elsewhere though, at the Foil, we're getting really busy, so please do subscribe if you're watching these videos. We'd love to have you on board. I also want to pull your attention to our newsletter, which has just started up. You can go to thefoil.com and sign up for that weekly release there. All the best, see you around.